Hello and welcome to Storytelling. It was the first time in 5 years that I was departing from a business show early. My company, a telecommunications company, attends 3 business shows annually. Each show lasts 5 days and is held in various cities across the nation. On Sunday and Monday, we move in and set up our booth. The show runs from Tuesday morning until Thursday at noon. I have worked all of those shows for the past 5 years, and every Thursday afternoon, I have stayed until the last box was loaded onto the truck. That is, until the most recent episode. I worked my last show at the San Diego Convention Center back in May. I severely twisted my ankle during that show on Tuesday night, making it impossible for me to work in our booth the following day. My boss told me during lunch on Wednesday that I should try to find a flight home since there was no use for me to stay at the show if I couldn't work. It didn't take 2 people to tell me. At 2 in the afternoon, I was returning to St. Louis on an aircraft. I called my 9-year wife Tammy and left her a message before I boarded the flight in San Diego, informing her that I would arrive home by 8 o'clock that evening. Before I left on the trip, Tammy had been upset with me over something, but she didn't want to talk about it at the time. When I returned home, she said we could handle it. I didn't enjoy getting a sprained ankle or hearing from my supervisor that I should leave the conference early. I was relieved to arrive home early and inquire about my wife's problems. My taxi pulled to a stop in front of our home, and I saw a black Cadillac sitting in our driveway. Since Tammy knew I was returning home, it bothered me a little that she would have company at the house and I didn't know anyone who drove a Cadillac. I assumed she would be eager to talk about whatever issue she believed we were having. I heard voices coming from the family room as soon as I walked in the front door. I got the shock of my life when I peeked into the family room from the kitchen after exiting the hallway. Tammy and Chad Williams, my best friend, were seated on the couch. This was not shocking in and of itself. What really got me was that Tammy's blouse was unbuttoned. I walked through the kitchen and stood at the edge of the family room, where Tammy and Chad hadn't seen me yet. "What the hell is going on here?" I yelled. After turning to face me, Tammy put her hand to her mouth. "Oh my God, George, what are you doing home?" she responded. Her statement and the fact that she didn't attempt to conceal her unbuttoned blouse struck me as particularly strange. It was almost as though she had anticipated this outcome. I inquired, "What is going on here?" Tammy remarked, "It's not what you think, honey." When she said that, she was actually grinning. I started to question whether I was dreaming until I realized I was awake when I felt the pain in my ankle once more. Chad had not moved in the brief time I had been in the room. He merely fixed an amused expression on his face and stared at me. I had taken everything I was going to. Chad is a big guy, but neither his size nor the pain in my ankle mattered to me. I intended to expel the idiot from my residence. As I stepped toward the sofa, I felt another man's hand suddenly grab hold of me. I didn't hear him approaching. He took hold of my right arm, twisted it around to face my back, and placed his left arm in a chokehold around my neck. Even though I could still breathe, I was aware that he could stop my airway at any time. "I think you understand the situation now, George," Tammy replied. "We have been waiting for you so we could start our little party." At last, Chad said something. "George, what are you doing at those business shows? Did you really believe that your girlfriends would remain a secret from me? Did you really think I wouldn't give a damn? Just so you know, I do give a damn. I'm going to hurt you because you hurt me. You get to watch while I play with Tyrone and Chad. How's that to you?" I attempted to correct Tammy, but the man securing me covered my mouth and nose with something before I could say anything. I was choking on the smell of whatever he was holding over my nose, and before I knew it, I was losing consciousness. I'm not sure how long I was out when I woke up and discovered that I was tied, arms spread, to the guest bedroom bed. My other ankle and my wrists were starting to feel numb, and my injured ankle felt like it was being pressed up against a hot iron. I glanced over and saw that speaker wire was fastened to my wrists and ankles so they would not come off. I think Tammy took the wire from my workshop. My circulation was being cut off by the bindings, which were made so tight by whoever had tied me down. For an instant, I couldn't recall what Tammy had said to me right before I passed out, but when I heard the voices on the TV at the foot of the bed, I remembered. When I turned to watch TV, I saw Tammy and Chad sitting on our bed, both fully nude. "Are you awake yet, George?" Looking straight into the camera, Tammy said, "I hope you are, because I wanted to show you this big, beautiful tool that I am going to enjoy. Chad gets to do me first, because he is the one who told me about your cheating and because he helped me set this up," she stated. "Tyrone, come over here so that George can see what a nice tool you have too." I think it was Tyrone who grabbed me from behind. "We're videotaping this so you can watch this as many times as you want," Tammy replied. That was when I stopped caring what Tammy did. Our union had ended. At that point, breaking free from my bonds was all that mattered to me. I was concerned about my hands and feet not getting enough blood flow. I was not sure how long Tammy and her friends would take to finish their work, and I was not going to wait around for them. I started pulling as hard as I could with my left leg, but the pain forced me to stop. After a half minute, I pulled once more. I pulled on the wire a few times before giving it a strong tug that caused it to break. Although my left ankle was bleeding when I looked at it, the wounds didn't appear to be too bad. I then started working on my right leg. I had sprained my right ankle, so this was much more difficult. My ankle was bleeding profusely and I had torn a large amount of skin off it before I could break the wires on my right leg. I was able to relieve the pressure on my arms by freeing my legs, but with just my teeth to work with, I was unable to undo the knots and the wire. Ultimately, I had to attempt breaking the wire securing my wrist in the same manner that I had broken the ones around my ankles. My right wrist was bleeding almost as much as my right ankle when I managed to free it. I found it quite easy to free myself from the last of my bindings now that my right arm and both legs were free. There were no deep cuts on my left wrist, but there was some bleeding. After being set free, I discovered that my wounds to both wrists and ankles were still bleeding. I searched the room for anything I could use as bandages, but I couldn't find anything. The sheet was soiled. The quantity of blood on the bed startled me. My head started spinning, so I had to sit down again even though I tried to stand up. My face hurt, my head was pounding, and I felt queasy. I was trying to settle my stomach with my eyes closed when I heard my name. I opened my eyes to find Tammy talking to me on the television, but for a brief moment I thought she had entered the room. "George, are you watching this?" When I looked at the television, I saw Tammy taking from Chad doggy style. I wondered for a brief moment if Tammy thought that I would somehow enjoy watching her getting drilled. If she had any idea how angry I was at the moment, I think she would have run from the house. I got off the bed and swung my right arm in an arc toward the television. This movement caused blood to splatter across the screen. I turned away from the television and saw myself in the mirror. There was a large bump on my forehead that was already beginning to turn black and blue. Upon closer inspection, it wasn't one bump but 4 small lumps. They were the kind of marks that would be left by someone's knuckles if you were punched in the head. I could not believe that my wife would arrange to have me drugged, beaten, and then tied to a bed so that she could humiliate me by having sex with my former best friend and some black guy I had never seen before. I thought about getting a baseball bat and going after the 3 of them, but realized that there was a big downside to doing that. I wasn't exactly feeling very strong at the moment. I was still feeling a little dizzy from whatever drug they had used on me, and if Chad and his friend overpowered me, there is no telling what they might do. On the other hand, if they weren't able to overpower me, I might kill someone, and they weren't worth my going to jail. Looking again at the mess in the room, an idea started to form. I smeared blood on the bedposts and the pillows, then I made 2 smeared parallel lines of blood on the carpet going from the side of the bed to the door. I went across the hall to the guest bathroom and found some gauze and adhesive tape under the sink. Before I left the bathroom, I was careful to make sure that I didn't leave any blood in the sink, on the cabinet door, or on the floor. Luckily, the master bedroom in our house was downstairs, so I didn't have to worry about Tammy or her lovers hearing me. I went back into the bedroom where I used my training to perform first aid on myself. I bandaged both ankles and my left wrist, leaving only the injuries to my right wrist exposed. Then, I picked up the cordless phone next to the bed, making sure I got blood on it, and dialed 911. When the 911 operator answered, I said, "Please help me. I think they're going to kill me. Oh God." Then, I dropped the phone on the floor without disconnecting, taking the gauze and tape with me. I slipped down the back stairway that leads into the garage and then out of the house, walking past the car in the driveway. I smeared some blood on the driver's door handle and put my bloody handprint on the trunk lid. After that, I walked over to the empty lot across the street from the house and found a hiding place behind some bushes and sat down to wait for the show. While I waited, I bandaged my right wrist. The wait wasn't very long. Within 5 minutes, the first police car arrived. 2 officers got out of the car and approached the house as a second car arrived. The 2 officers from the second car went around to the back of the house, while the 2 at the front door waited until they were in position. One of the officers at the front door rang the doorbell. He waited about 30 seconds and rang it again, and after another 30 seconds, he pounded on the door with his hand. The front porch light came on, and Tammy opened the door. I would have bet that she was ready to wet her panties when she saw the police at the door. Unfortunately, I was too far away to see the expression on her face. "We had a 911 call from this address a few minutes ago. Can you tell us what that call was about?" one of the officers asked Tammy. "I don't know anything about a 911 call," she said. "Who else is in the house with you?" "No one," Tammy replied. Tammy was in trouble now. They would never accept that answer. "You say there is no one else in the house?" "That's right. I am home alone. My husband is out of town at a business show," Tammy said. At that moment, Tammy's world turned as the 2 officers that had gone around to the back of the house reappeared with Chad and Tyrone in hand. "Look who we found sneaking out the back door," it was the officer holding on to Chad who had spoken. When Tammy saw Chad and Tyrone, she seemed to lose her legs and she slid down against the door casing until she was sitting on the floor. One of the officers helped Tammy to her feet and took her back into the house. Then, the other officers took Chad and Tyrone into the house. I was disappointed that I couldn't see what was happening inside the house. I tried to imagine the scene when the police opened the door to the guest bedroom and saw the mess. The shocked look on Tammy's face when she saw that I wasn't in the room would be priceless. I looked at the car in the driveway and wished that I could sneak across the street and get into the trunk, but I couldn't risk being seen. There were 10 minutes of total silence followed by all kinds of noise and confusion. 2 more police cars arrived on the scene with sirens and lights. Shortly after that, Chad and Tyrone were brought out of the house in handcuffs, both arguing with the police, saying that they didn't do anything to the woman's husband. The 2 men were placed in the back seat of separate cars and left while the police officers took a close look at the car in the driveway. The blood on the driver's door handle was spotted rather quickly, followed by the discovery of the blood on the trunk lid. One of the officers went to the car Tyrone was in and got the car keys, then opened the trunk. I really did wish I could have been in the trunk when he opened it, but as it turned out, it didn't matter. The officer looking into the trunk called another officer over, and then a third. "We have weapons and drugs here," the officer called out to a plainclothes officer who had just arrived on the scene. 3 MAC-10s and about a kilo of what appears to be cocaine. For the next 20 minutes, I watched as the police took pictures of the contents of the trunk of Tyrone's car, and then had the car towed away. The 2 cars that Chad and Tyrone were in left, and a short while later, Tammy came out of the house in handcuffs and was placed in a patrol car and driven away. There were still police in the house, and I watched as they put crime scene tape across the front door. I decided then that it was time for me to leave. I walked through the empty lot to the street behind, and then, keeping to the shadows, I walked the 10 blocks to a shopping center with a McDonald's restaurant. I realized that I looked pretty messed up with bloody bandages on my wrists and ankles and a black and blue goose egg on my forehead, but I needed to get off the street for a while, and I had just enough change in my pocket to buy a large cup of coffee. When I walked into the restaurant, I expected everyone to stare at me, but as it turns out, I fit right in with the crowd in that particular McDonald's. There must have been 15 street people in there eating a burger or drinking coffee. No one paid any attention to me as I sat in a corner and drank my coffee as I thought about what I had instigated. I couldn't help but smile. The image of Tammy, Chad, and Tyrone being questioned by the police made me almost laugh out loud. The police would be asking them what they did with my body, and of course, they couldn't answer that question, and anything they did say would be assumed to be lies. The one problem I still had was how to reappear and not be accused of intentionally misleading the police. By the time I finished my coffee, I had an idea that I thought would work. When I took my empty coffee cup up to the counter to ask for a refill, the manager came over and told me he would refill my cup if I would then leave the restaurant. I accepted his offer. With a fresh cup of coffee in hand, I started off on the 20-block walk to a park I was familiar with. Between ducking behind trees and shrubs, anytime I saw a car coming, and the difficulty I had walking on my injured ankle, it took me nearly an hour to walk to the park. Once there, I found a picnic table in a dark corner of the park and sat there until 3 o'clock in the morning. At that time, I removed my bandages and threw them in the trash. Then, I moved to the far side of the park and lay down in the grass next to a jogging trail. In spite of the pain in my wrists and ankles, especially my right ankle, I was able to sleep on and off until the sun began to come up. I lay as still as I could, hoping that I might even fall asleep again as I waited for what I knew was going to happen. The park I was in was a favorite for joggers and people walking their dogs in the morning. I knew that I would soon be discovered by one of them. I was right, and within a half hour, I was in the back of an ambulance headed for the hospital. I had left my wallet on the bedside table in the guest room at home, so I had no identification when I got to the hospital. For some reason, I wasn't coherent when the doctors in the emergency room tried to find out who I was and what happened to me. I also had a hard time staying awake. I wanted to make sure my charade didn't end too soon. It was almost noon before the police showed up. I faked sleep until nearly 1 o'clock, and then I was ready to talk. I had been rehearsing what I would say and how I would answer questions so that I would not stray too far from the truth. "Mr. Grant, are you Mr. George Grant?" the plainclothes officer asked. "Yes, I'm George Grant." "Mr. Grant, I am Detective Mason, and I would like to ask you a few questions if you're up to it." "Okay, but I am not sure how much help I'll be. I don't remember much of what happened. I don't even know how I got here." "You were found in a park by a man walking his dog about 6 o'clock this morning." "Why don't you tell me what you do remember?" Mason said. "I came home from a trip to San Diego last night. I was earlier than I was supposed to get home. When I walked in the house, I found my wife talking to my best friend, Chad Williams. When I asked her what was going on, some guy grabbed me from behind and held me while my wife started yelling at me about something. I was having trouble breathing, so I wasn't able to concentrate on what Tammy was saying. I think they must have drugged me because the next thing I remember was that I woke up in our guest bedroom, and I was tied to the bed. I noticed that I was bleeding where they had tied my wrists and ankles, and I was beginning to lose sensation in my hands and feet. I managed to get loose, but I did more damage to my wrists and ankles. That's when I noticed the television. It was turned on, and the picture was coming from the master bedroom. Tammy was having sex with Chad and another man, a big black guy I had never seen before. I thought I heard them talking about what they were going to do with me when they finished my wife. It sounds like they were planning to kill me, but I can't be sure because my thinking was still a little cloudy. I thought that they were raping Tammy, and they were going to kill both of us. That's when I managed to break the wire they had used to tie me to the bed. Then I called 911. You didn't finish that call, Mr. Grant. Why did you drop the phone? Mason asked. I dropped the phone when I realized that Tammy was a willing participant. I thought I heard her say something like, "Go take care of that," so I decided that I had better try and get out of the house. But I don't remember anything after that. I obviously got out, but I don't know how. Do you remember anyone hitting you? Mason asked. No, I don't think so, I said, but a lot of what happened is still a little cloudy. What is my wife saying about what happened? I asked. She claims that she found out you have been cheating on her on your business trips, so she wanted to teach you a lesson. She said that you weren't supposed to be injured and that they were going to release you as soon as she was done getting even with you. Did she say where she got the idea that I cheated? I asked. She said that Mr. Williams told her. What a stupid, the only proof she has that I cheated is the word of one person, and he's the one she decides to get even with me, I said. I thought she was smarter than to fall for something like that. So, you were saying that you never had an affair? You're damn right, I said. I have never cheated on my wife, and all she had to do was ask me about it. I could have easily proved that I hadn't cheated. It kind of makes me wonder if maybe this was just something she wanted to do, and she used this supposed cheating thing as an excuse. Detective Mason asked me a few questions to clarify some points, but he didn't challenge anything I had said. I was released from the hospital the following day. When I got home, there was a message on our message recorder from Tammy. She was pleading with me to come down to the police station and tell them this was all a misunderstanding. She said she needed me to post her bail so she could get out. I erased the message and got a beer out of the refrigerator. The phone rang again, and it was Susan Crawford, Tammy's best friend. Susan was a divorcee. Her husband caught her cheating and tossed her us out in the street. I had never liked Susan, and I didn't like the influence she had on Tammy. Somehow, I knew she had something to do with Tammy's behavior. Susan said that she needed to talk to me, and it was important. Being the curious sort, I invited her over. Susan arrived an hour later. I talked to Tammy, Susan said. She's at her parents' house. She told me that you were cheating on her when you went on your business trips. You know that's not true. I have never cheated on her, I said. Did she tell you what she did? She just said that there was some kind of misunderstanding and that you called the police and they arrested her, Susan said. I can't believe that Tammy did anything that bad. You really had her arrested? Why? I spent the next 20 minutes telling Tammy the same thing I had told Detective Mason. After all, most of it was the truth. Susan pretended to be shocked, but she didn't turn against Tammy. That is not like Tammy. I just can't believe she would do something so insane unless she had some sort of a breakdown, Susan said. Maybe so. Are you going to talk to her? Give her a chance to explain her side of things? Susan asked. If I have to, maybe. I must inquire, though, why I didn't receive the same consideration from her. Why didn't she talk to me before taking such a drastic action if she felt that I was acting inappropriately? Did she discuss this with you? I inquired. No, if she had, I would have told her to talk to you about it, said Susan. I was skeptical of that for a moment. I had a good feeling Susan didn't think much of me, so I didn't think Tammy's plan for retaliation would have caused her any trouble. George, I have no idea what the hell got into her. Susan remarked, all I can say is that you should wait to make any decisions until you have all the information. Don't worry, I'll not, I uttered. After giving me a kiss on the lips, Susan asked if there was anything she could do to support me. I played the fool even though I knew exactly what she meant. No, Susan, you've already been a great assistance. I simply need some time to myself. I called a lawyer as soon as Susan left, and we scheduled a meeting for that afternoon at 2 o'clock. By 3 o'clock I was in Brian L. Townsend's offices. I told him quickly what Tammy had done to me and that I wanted him to file for divorce from her right away. I informed him that I wanted her to receive the papers the following day. Mr. Grant, are you sure you want to proceed so quickly with this before you have all the facts? Mr. Townsend inquired. At the age of 68, I have managed more divorces than you can possibly imagine. If the couple had taken a little longer to make sure it was what they wanted to do, many of those marriages might have been saved. Do you not think that before moving forward, you ought to give this some more thought? Maybe you're correct. Perhaps I ought to think about this a bit more, I uttered. Excellent, excellent. Mr. Townsend stated, I'm happy that you're willing to give this a little more time. Yeah, I'll give it some more time, I replied. Why don't we wait until the day after tomorrow? I asked Tammy, rather than giving her the divorce papers as I had intended to do tomorrow. Mr. Townsend appeared somewhat bewildered. The following day? I assumed you consented to wait for a while. Mr. Townsend, are you sure you want to proceed with this so quickly? With all due respect, if you are not willing to act on my behalf in this matter, there are several other lawyers in the phone book who will, I responded. All right, Mr. Grant, if you desire that. The day after tomorrow, I'll have your wife served with the papers, Mr. Townsend declared. I provided Mr. Townsend with Tammy's work address as well as the information that she was at her parents' house. My right ankle was still hurting like a son of a gun, but other than that, I felt numb when I left his office. I went to the bank as soon as I got out of Mr. Townsend's office and cancelled all of our joint credit cards and accounts. I then opened fresh accounts under my own name. I was going to make her work for the money, even though I knew that at some point I would probably have to give it to her. Tammy made multiple attempts to contact me at home and at work over the course of the following 2 weeks. I didn't pick up when she called. Subsequently, I received a call from my attorney, informing me that Tammy would file for divorce unless we could arrange a meeting for her to share her account. I'll need some time to think about that, I replied. Mr. Townsend said, that's fine, just call me when you decide what you want to do. It took me a little over a month to give Mr. Townsend a call back. Does Tammy still want to meet with me before she will agree to the divorce? I inquired. I expected to hear back from you much sooner than this, he replied. I'll contact her attorney and find out if she is still insisting on a meeting. Later that day, I received a call from Mr. Townsend, who informed me that Tammy was still interested in our meeting. Here's what I want you to tell my wife, I replied. Inform her that I will not meet with her in person and that I will not object if she wants to fight the divorce. All we'll do is put everything on hold until she's comfortable consenting to the divorce. While this is going on, we will still be married, but I won't be seeing or speaking with her. Is that understood correctly? Excellent clarity, Mr. Grant. I will forward your reply. I went to see Beverly, Chad's wife, the following day. She offered me a drink and invited me inside. She began to apologize for what Chad had done when we were seated next to each other on the couch, but I interrupted her. Beverly, you bear no greater guilt for Chad's actions than I do for Tammy's. They are accountable for the things they do. You're right, of course, but I still feel bad about what happened to you. The reason I came over today was to see if perhaps you would like to comfort each other, I replied. Beverly said, why, George, you little devil. You know, Beverly, I've always thought you were really attractive, and if we'd met when I was single, I would have definitely made a date with you. I was just thinking about that now. Beverly kissed me on the lips before I could say anything more. With a I'd love to, she replied. Beverly showed me to her bedroom, where I undressed her. We took our time making love to each other. Beverly whispered in my ear, anytime you want to get together to comfort each other again, just let me know. I love what you were doing to me, and I think I love you. I received a call from the district attorney's office the following week. This is Andrew Harley, Mr. Grant. I am the deputy district attorney managing the cases involving Tyrone Matters, Chad Williams, and your spouse. According to what your wife's lawyer has told us, he thought you wouldn't bring charges against her. Is that accurate? No, that's not right at all. I haven't spoken to anyone about that. I'm not sure what I should do at all. I am aware that my wife played a role in what transpired, but I'm not sure if she had any plans to have me restrained or drugged. I'm not sure I can prove it, but I think she did. Furthermore, I have no idea who tied me to the bed so firmly that my hands and feet were losing blood flow. I'm not requesting the dismissal of any charges. I'll let you make the decision about how to handle these individuals. Everyone ultimately received what they were due. Tyrone was found guilty on charges of kidnapping, assault, possession of illegal drugs, and additional felonies related to the guns discovered in his car's trunk. Tammy entered a guilty plea to conspiracy to commit unlawful restraint, while Chad entered a guilty plea to assault. That one, I believe, was made up especially for her. Tyrone served hard time in a maximum security facility, while Chad served a year in a minimum security facility. Tammy had the easiest time off. Probation was imposed upon her. Even though Tammy received a light sentence, the conviction was nonetheless regarded as a felony. She was out of a voice regarding our divorce. I got rid of her, but the house and all our savings stayed with me. Susan came to see me a month after we got divorced and asked if I would talk to Tammy. She informed me that Tammy merely wanted to apologize and give an explanation for what she had done. Although I pretended to be hesitant about meeting with her, I was actually interested in hearing Tammy's perspective. I allowed Susan to persuade me to meet Tammy at a cocktail lounge approximately 1 mile from my residence. Tammy said, "Thanks for agreeing to see me," as she slid into the booth across from me. She began, "George, I am so sorry for what I did to you. However, you need to comprehend the struggles I was facing. I recently learned that you were having extramarital affairs each time you left the country." "No, I wasn't. No, I wasn't what I said. I wasn't having extramarital affairs. I said, I never cheated on you." "Of course, I know that now, but I didn't know it then," Tammy replied. "I trusted Chad when he told me you were having an affair. I thought he would never lie to me. After all, he was your best friend. I felt so resentful and hurt. I suppose for a while I went insane. Let me be clear on this. You already believed that I was having extramarital affairs each time I traveled when I was preparing to leave on that most recent trip." "Yes. So when I asked you what was bothering you before I left, why didn't you tell me?" I inquired. "I should have, but I needed more time to deal with it before I could talk to you about it," Tammy replied. "You had only Chad's word for it that I was cheating on you, but you weren't ready to ask me if it was true," I said, finally managing to stop laughing at her. "Chad's desire to participate in your retaliation didn't raise any red flags for you, even though you were prepared to plan it." "I apologize. I'm not sure what got to me. Whose idea it was to include Tyrone in this transaction? We needed someone to make sure you wouldn't hurt us or run away before we could bind you to the bed, according to what Chad suggested. Chad had a friend named Tyrone. Chad makes good friends. I expressed my ignorance about his association with drug dealers." "How did you let Chad talk you into letting Tyrone in?" Tammy looked away from me, her face flushed. "I had sex with Chad the night before you came home," she stated. He claimed that including Tyrone would make matters worse. "This story is just getting better and better, Holy. Would you mind telling me what you anticipated happening after this was over? Did you think I would forget what you did to me? Well, I thought it would make us even then, so we could move on and put this all behind us." I started laughing uncontrollably again at this. "For the sake of argument, let's say that I was genuinely unfaithful to you. It wasn't hurting you until Chad told you I was cheating because you were unaware of it," I remarked. "I know how hurtful that would be for you, but you didn't really catch me in the act of cheating. You never witnessed me conversing with any other woman, much less one. Thus, you chose to exact revenge rather than coming to me and telling me that you discovered I was having an affair. You two used to be my best friends, and your plan to get even was to drug me and then tie me to the bed so I would have to watch you two. You somehow believed that by humiliating me, this whole scene would bring us even. If most wives wanted to exact revenge, they would just have their own affair. Your actions went far beyond merely exacting revenge. You went too far, and I would never be able to forgive you for what you did to me, even if I had cheated on you." Tammy lowered her head and started crying. "Please give me one more opportunity. I cherish you. You have my undying love. I have only ever loved you, man. I meant no harm at all to you. I had only had sex with Tyrone and Chad. It was unrelated to love. Is there anything I can do to win your love back, please? If you would just give me one more chance, I would do anything you ask of me." With her eyes wide open and tears rolling down her cheeks, Tammy was staring at me. I was never able to endure seeing her cry. "Tammy, did you truly mean it?" She said, "Did I mean what? Did you mean it when you said that you would do anything?" I inquired. Tammy made an effort to dry her tears. "Yes, I did mean what I said. Anything you want, I'll do." I got up and slid out of the booth. I leaned down to place my mouth near Tammy's ear, put my hand on her shoulder, and uttered the words "drop dead." Tammy started crying as her head fell to the top of the table. She was still crying, and I could hear it as I left the house. I married Beverly after 7 months. If you've made it this far, listener, please click the subscribe button. It will be very beneficial.